Right, so I am creating trivia questions, so everybody be sure to take notes.
I was actually hoping you, yeah. So now I'm actually disappointed we're recording my first one, but we'll see how this goes. Yeah, this is, it'll be rough the first time, but let's talk about ETL. Let's talk about batch. So we all do data integration. Let me pull up a little slide for you, and I went to find us a use case. So this is me and my diagram art. There is this thing called ALS, American Sign Language. Oh no, ASL, sorry. Let's fix that. See, that's what happens the first time you do it, right? So ASL, see, I'm glad, if you're recording, you just got me fixing that. You're looking at ASL letters. People do it with their hands. So A is this, S is this, L is that. And my name is this, right? So you could train a computer to interpret images of somebody. You guys could go make a Raspberry Pi with a little camera on it and sign at it, and it could read what you're saying, right? So I wanted to go find a way to sort of make an ETL use case for this presentation series, and I kind of thought training an AI to read ASL alphabets would be a really cool use case. So, and I thought it also, I sort of adapted this from real work, and I had to completely take all the real work out of it. So I have a real ETL so it's sort of shaped the same as this use case, but I replaced everything with stuff that doesn't look anything like my real job. So, so what we're doing is we're looking at a use case where we've got to do a data integration. So data integration is usually this is how it comes to you when you're doing the architecture part. Is there's this mysterious cloud called integration that you're supposed to go make, right? And you're given some stuff about what the systems involved do. So what the use case I came up with is we're going to start with Kaggle.com, and I want to give a plug for Kaggle. It's so awesome, especially for meetup presenters, because you can find all these cool data sets on here to work with. And now it's really there for data scientists. Like, they made the site for data scientists and AI researchers, but for integrations people like you and me, look, it's a whole bunch of really neat data sets you can use to practice or build challenges. And they actually have competitions on there. So I don't get any money from this. Kaggle doesn't even know about me. I'm just a big fan as a user of it. So if you want to go do cool puzzles, learning how to do integrations, I recommend their data sets and their challenges. Now, there's a lot more in there than just integrations. So I found in here, I just did a search of large data sets, and ASL alphabet is the one I found. There's more in there. And I found a data set of about a gigabyte worth of data of images of people doing sign language alphabets. And that's one person, right? And I thought, wouldn't it be cool, like, if we had a site or a system where anybody could, like, if you were going to build a system that did, that interpreted these ASL signs, you would want any other people, like deaf people, to be able to contribute their own images, and then you could pay them for them. So I figured if you were going to make a little startup that did this, now this is totally fictional. I did it for the meetup, but you would make a way that the contributors could provide their sign language images, and then you would have to pull them into some kind of system where your AI agent could train itself on all these images. So I designed a kind of a quick example, and I actually have this set up. So I have an S3 bucket. This is on Amazon. So for those who don't, there's several cloud providers that offer cloud storage, and S3 is a way you can put in, you can create these things called buckets. Buckets look like kind of like FTP sites, but it's just a place you can store data online. And in the buckets, you can store data, right? And the data can have metadata, and that's where I'm going to put the images, because you got to store the images somewhere so that the agent can read them back out, right? And so for my use case, my idea was, we're going to store them in here. There may be other integrations here. That's what these purple dotted arrows are. Future projects in my solution, because you got to draw a box around your solution when you do integration. You got to just do this much, right? So we're stopping at S3 bucket and a Postgres database, which I launched my Postgres database on DigitalOcean. And I don't, when I'm a happy user of a product, I don't mind advertising for them a little bit. How do I get in there? I have to go get my password. I'm online, so I'm not going to go do that. But I provisioned a Postgres database on DigitalOcean for $15 a month, and for one talk, that's like not even $1. And you make some tables in there. So I figured you'd have one set of tables for training metadata, and that's what the supervised learning, the agent's going to have to read those tables to know what the images are, right? Because you have the images and you got to know what letter they are. And some of them are training images and some of them are test images. So the training metadata tells you about that. And then there would be another table in there for a future integration, how you pay the people for their uploads, right? So I'm designing kind of an integration, and I want you to think about how you would do it. An integration that would take these files from the FTP server, which are zip files. I'll show you what they look like. Here's a zip file. This is the one from Kaggle. So we're just going to take the one from Kaggle, and then we're going to have our contributors upload zip files that look like this. So they have folders in them, test folder and train folder. And inside those folders are images. You open them up, and there's an image, right? And they're all JPEGs here, right? And then in the training folder, it actually tells you what the images are, right? So here's all the bee images. You open one of them up, there's somebody making a bee, not with very good lighting, right? I'll make a bigger one. Let's get one with good lighting here. So here's another letter B here, right? And let's make it bigger so you can kind of see that's the letter B in ASL, right? So if we wanted a contributor to upload one, they would make a zip file and they would put all these folders in it, right? And this looks a lot like ETL. I think those of you who've had to do batch integration and ETL, you have files and the files are organized in folders and you got to pick them up and do stuff with them. That's one use case. And sometimes it's the reverse. Sometimes you got to write files into folders or something. So each ETL use case is a little different. So this is actually a lot like what I run into in enterprises all the time. I get these file-based integrations that have to start with something like this. So my use case is I decided to make up that contributors would upload these zip files, and the zip files need to look like this. And we're going to tear these zip files apart with some kind of mysterious integration software. I wonder what we should use. Anybody have any recommendations? What kind of integration platform would be appropriate for this problem? Informatica or Spark? What do you think?
Maybe Informatica?
No, MuleSoft. That's what kind of meetup is this?
I'm kidding.
Yeah, all these tools will work.
We will just say this silence was uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. So you could use any. I'm going to show you how I think we could solve this. The MuleSoft, not just with MuleSoft, the tool. We're going to start with classic ETL. Oh, Ricardo says no MuleSoft. Why not? But I'm going to show. It's not enough to say what's my platform. We're going to look at what kind of patterns we would use to implement the solution. So I want to start with kind of the classic ETL pattern. So on the last diagram, I had the SFTP server here with whoever's loading it up with data. And I got the Postgres and the S3 buckets over here with whatever's reading the data out. And then I got to build the integration. So I got to have what's in the middle of those, right? So here's my S3 bucket, here's my Postgres database, and here's my SFTPs. So, when you first start the project, if you're brand new to Mule, you're probably going to just open up Anypoint Studio, right? And make an application and get started. I wonder if I have it open down here, and it might be just like new Mule project. Oops, I did the wrong one. You might just start one new Mule application and you figure it's going to read from FTP. So this might be like Mule Classic ETL, right? And I'm going to show you maybe why you wouldn't want to do it the classic way. That's the whole point of the presentation, right? So the classic way would create some flows, right? You'd have a flow that starts with an FTP server, right? So you might have SFTP read in a flow, right? And then it would need to take the file apart with the compression module because it's a zip, right? So you have to add it in Exchange here, the compression module. So there are the Mule connectors give us all the building blocks to actually do the integration. And many times in my architecture classes, I'm faced with this question of, Mule's already got all these connectors. What do I need APIs for? So I'm going to make an API-led point coming up, except I don't know what's going on with my Anypoint Studio. So we're going to go back to the diagram. So, the classic way to do this is you would create a bunch of little building blocks in an application called flows, right? And those flows would use connectors. So you have a flow, you make another flow, maybe you stick a scheduler in there. You could build it that way, right? And one of these flows is going to send data to S3, right? And Oops. And one of these flows is going to send data to Postgres, right? And those are ugly. So I have no patience for ugly arrows. There we go. And one of these flows is going to go get data out of the SFTP server, right? And one of these flows is going to tie the other flows together. And that's kind of the classic ETL way of doing Mule. And my point, maybe in my as an integration architect, my point is you can do this kind of idea. Maybe there'd be more flows too. You could do this with Java. You could do this with Informatica. You could do this with Camel. You could do this with TIBCO. You could do this with IIB. There's nothing special about Mule when you do it like this, right? It's just another integration tool, right? And I think MuleSoft is onto something when they bring in APIs into it. So I want you to think about what it would look like and why you would. And I'm not going to tell you the answer. I'm not going to ask you. Maybe Diane's going to make trivia questions, but why would I want to split this up into more than one program? Why would I want to make 2 programs or 3 programs that work together to solve the same problem? Right? You don't have to, right? You can do it in one big program. Good, decoupling, reusability. I like the thinking here so there's something about smaller interlocking pieces of software, reliability, very good. Now that is not obvious, Andy. It's the way we get the reliability from microservices is there's a few hot steps you need to take to make that case in a court of law, but it is more. I agree that you're going to have more reliability by breaking this up into microservices. Now, what MuleSoft's here, you also don't need MuleSoft to make microservices. You know that. You can go build them in anything, right? You can make microservices in all kind of language. What MuleSoft makes really powerfully is the connections between the microservices. This new arrow you have in the middle, if you break your code up into smaller pieces. Yeah, maintainability, good. Samba, so Samba's got the first concrete proposal. 2 system APIs and a process API, which is exactly how my real work one ended up. The one at my actual job ended up being 2 system APIs and a process API. That's not how this one's going to end up, because this is a meetup and we're looking at possibility, right? So you can make these APIs, which are the boundary between the programs. And those APIs become the place where reusability happens and reliability and monitoring. You get an ability to build a maintainable, reusable, what else did you put? Reliable, decoupled system when we start breaking this integration up into pieces. So we want a way to do that, right? And this is my argument. Maybe MuleSoft sales will be happy to have this video. This is why I think Mule's better at ETL than some of the classic ETL platforms, because we end up with reusable software. We end up with parts of our system that we build that get to go forward in time and be valuable on their own later. So I'm going to show you maybe a way to think of it in a more modular way. So I added another external component. I was thinking about this before the talk. We don't have to have an experience API. We could just do it with a process API and a Mule scheduler. That's fine. Or if we want to use our other, we're already in Amazon anyway. Amazon has 2 or 3 ways, it turns out, to do enterprise scheduling. One of them that's kind of lightweight is called CloudWatch events. And you can have those CloudWatch events be monitored and fire off an API call. So we could build a CloudWatch events experience API that keeps track of the job and everything, and then answers it. So this is not the way to solve the problem. This is a way to solve the problem. And what you're starting to get out of this is you end up with reusable. The SFTP input method is encapsulated. Right, it becomes its own reusable piece of software right here, the system API in front of SFTP. And the Postgres system that you're putting your tables into becomes a reusable piece of software, and the S3 bucket becomes a reusable piece of software. And maybe you will change the way all these things plug into each other. Maybe you'll change your reliability patterns. And when you're changing things, those things are in smaller bits. Those things are easier to change and easier to maintain. So what I'm proposing here is that ATL and batch integrations and bulk data loads in Mule are just the same as real time. It's not different. it has a different name because of history, because it used to be something we did with these batch programs that picked up files and put them down. I've been doing a lot of work with an open source product called Pentaho Community Edition, and it's really good at file-based integration. And although I still like DataWeave better, but and then part of what we would decide is what belongs in each one of these programs. And so I wanted to maybe take a minute and we'll do I'll do question and answer in the middle and make room for the first trivia question, and then we're going to dive into how you would actually go design the APIs here. So go ahead, Diana. Are you ready with your first? Let me go back to the challenge. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it.
I don't know if it'd be worth sharing the screen that I have the question on so that people can answer accordingly. Okay. Or is that a little bit too share screen? Okay, here we go. Let me move this out of the way 1 second. Hold on. Let me make this good. Okay. So the first question is kind of a little whimsical, but nonetheless, it's coming.
Okay.
There you go. What does the acronym ETL mean? Entertainer, trainer, is lively? Enterprise transformation loader? Extract, transform, load, or encryption, transform, latency? And the winner is, let me go back to the top of the list.
I think Mana has to call it. Mana, call it.
Oh, Mana? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Diane. Yeah, Adam got it right. He's got the fastest finger so far.
Excellent. You did not choose A. I'm surprised A was not chosen. Seriously.
So before I go on, do you want to do all of them? Because I have nope. We're going to do the anypoint part next.
Nope. I'm creating them on the fly, love. So let's keep going.
Cool. All right.
There you go.
There we go. So what I did, and we're going to do this as a collaborative exercise, I think. I did the first one. I decided, like I always do with API, that I'm going to start on the source. When I build batch integrations and when I do one-way data transfers, I tend to start at the edges and work to the middle. So I started on the source end of how we're going to pick up the data. And then what we're going to do together is we're going to come and model APIs for the target end. And I want to see what you guys think is best. So let's go ahead. Actually, I put it in a different browser. Wait, I see some chats happening, and I should probably be watching. There we go. Oh, okay. Yep. All right. So I built a data submission system API already. Now I want to show you a couple of things that I did just out of the box. This is just, and I don't know how much of this is part of what I think I do in these presentations is I kind of just show the way I do it, and we talk about whether we like it or not. So some of this I didn't plan for teaching. It's more just sharing. So one of the things I did is I put a health endpoint on there. It's one of these patterns I always do. Because when you're trying to hook your systems up and you have them broken down into these little pieces like this, you want to know if each piece is okay. So I have a standard API endpoint I stick on there where I can always just see if it's up and running, right? Each one of these little blue boxes, I have a way to reach in and check on it, and it just gives me back okay. So I put this health endpoint on there. We call this a liveness check. And sometimes we put readiness checks on our APIs, and that's a whole other talk about system health. But I put it in there because and then I added an endpoint, and what you'll notice is I'm giving back JSON, including the image. And I thought about this a lot, and one reason I've designed my APIs like this, even what I was planning on doing is base64 encoding the image inside the JSON, and that is not the only way to do it. We could return multi-part with a MIME type and several different media types. That's another way to design this, and just return binary data for the images. Part of what I wanted JSON for has to do with DataWeave. Maybe I'll just do an on-the-fly trivia question here. Why, for ETL, I'm going to call this a trivia question. All right, this might be harder. Let's see how it goes. Why do you think JSON might be better for bulk data in DataWeave than application octet stream? So if I put the octet stream here. Anybody have a clue? Oh, Suhail got it. So Suhail just said DataWeave is a streaming. Now, what do you mean by that, sir? I'm going to give it to you if you can you unmute? I don't know if you can unmute. Is it possible? Or
let's see. I don't know if I have that. No, I'm not able to.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. Why is it
Oh.
worse for streaming?
Yeah, because like I've seen some ETL processes in which we are inserting into a database and everything is going in streaming. So I think MuleSoft by default is streaming.
It is. Yeah. And JSON is better than Octet Stream with data weave streaming, right?
Right.
And the reason is a shortcoming in data weave. So I'll show you guys. It's in the Mule documentation. This is one that I had. This is what I really ran into. Thank you, Sahil. Yeah. And under data weave, you'll see a. Let me get to the latest version here. There's a page on streaming. Is it in language guide? Here it is. There are 3 data formats that data weave knows how to stream if you turn on what's called deferred mode transformations. I can, Ricardo. Good call. Good call. Yeah. So in data weave, you can't stream binary. It won't run streaming in data weave. You have to turn on a streaming reader on the way into data weave, and it has to use deferred mode. So what I want to show you is what that actually looks like. And this is good. This is at the very beginning of our flow. Let's see if it works. It got frozen up on me before. So I built a system API here from that interface. And I kind of made my health endpoint. Here's the actual get call. Now I had a different interface when I built this one. But when you read from SFTP, you have to set a MIME type. And I didn't set one here. So out of the gate, if I have to do a transformation where I'm going to stream it, let me add one. You're going to want to add a deferred mode. So let's do like this. And if I'm going to produce JSON, I have to change the output type to JSON. And I will have to add this setting, deferred equal true, right? And deferred equals true means that data weave will not throw errors. You will not get a Mule error if your expression fails. But you can do payload, map, whatever, whatever your expression is, and produce an array of objects of some kind, right? So maybe it'd be file name, payload dot. I would have to look at what I get out of the zip extract. So file name would be dollar dot. I don't know if it's entry name, something like that. I don't have the attributes available to me. So whatever you make the map operation you do, if you have an error in here, like if I make this entry name, I don't know, if I did something in here where the expression would fail, let me see. So let me put like bad function, and I try to call like a bad expression in my data weave, Mule will not fail the event at this point because I made it deferred equals true. So that's just a sacrifice we make when we use deferred mode data weave. But as in return, we don't have to put the entire data into our RAM, which is kind of nice because sometimes on Cloud Hub especially, we don't have that much RAM. So use deferred mode data weave when you're reading from a streamable source, and the streamable source has to be one of these 3 types. That's just a Mule4 thing. So you can't do binary, unfortunately. So we could pick CSV, JSON, or XML. And what I decided to do in my design of my API was to return, where did it go? Return application JSON instead of Optex stream. So that was my reason for not choosing multipart, right? Because the other option, of course, was multipart. I could do form data. There's a couple of multipart MIME types to choose from where you don't have to turn the data into base64 for the images. So this is the first step of building the, where is it? Where's my diagram? Yeah, building this, in this case, it was this system API right here. It's to define the interface that the process API is going to call. And then I'm probably going to go to the system API that goes out to S3 next, and the system API that goes to Postgres next. And I think I want to do that with you guys. So let's see. Let's go ahead and start the, I want to call this the, let's see, the ASL images system API. There we go. This is the one that's going to sit in front of S3. And let's just go ahead and make our health endpoint. And let's turn off our teams. There we go. There we go. I could copy and paste that, but it's kind of in my brain already. There we go. All right. So now let's do what do you think the resource should be? We're going to be building. This is not a trivia question. We're building some software together. If we're going to build this system API here that goes off to S3, let's see. So in the chat, what would the resource be and the method, do you think? Samba says a post. Okay, so we're going to have post and put are going to be different. Yeah, and both are fine. So when we have one proposal for post, what do you think what are we posting? Images. So is that going to be the resource to you guys? So we have Samba says we should use. So what I got from Samba's comment would look like this. It would be /images post. What do you guys think? I don't see any smiley faces on his or angry faces or alternatives. Of course, you give yourself a smiley. Shreya's smiling. She likes images post. What are we posting to the images? Now this is an interesting one. What should go to the images endpoint? I suppose it needs a body. And then what MIME type should the body have? Oh, JSON, even though it's an image. How come? Why do we want JSON for an image? To include image metadata. Image can go in base 64. It sure can. And remember, we're already getting the images in base 64, right? So if we design our, let's go back and look at this. If we design the system API here to accept the same data type we get back here, then the process API doesn't have to do any transformations. They can just pick it up and drop it off, like the postal service, right? That's kind of nice, right? So there we go. Yeah. So let's go do it. Let's go make it. So here's the endpoint we're starting with is this ASL alphabet one, and it's going to have an image. I didn't make a very good example here. Please forgive my bad documentation. So we're going to do application JSON, and we need to give it enough information. We can't just give it the image binary, right? If I do type object, it'll have a property image colon, right? But it'll need more than that because I got to go put it somewhere in S3. Remember, S3 is a bucket. It's got to know which folder to put it in. So we're going to need this piece of information, whether it's training or test. So let's go see what that looks like. And I like to do this a lot. Sometimes we'll use fragments. I don't usually start with fragments. So let's go back and look. Looks like I'm using class to mean training or test, right? So we're going to give it a class property. And I suppose it probably needs to also know the file name. Now, did I get a file name on this one? Character, file name. I do have file name. Post, if submit data, get, if push data, for example. Yeah, we could have used the put, right? We could have told it exactly, but we're putting the file name here in the body instead, right? And what does that mean? That means we should be expecting to get duplicates of the same file name and storing those as versions in S3, right? And the choice we're making here has consequences, right? More one field to data submit file. Yeah, we could if we wanted the date. I think the reason I'm not putting too much more here on this image API, remember, is there's going to be a training metadata table in the other system API. So I would be expecting to store a lot of that data here, including the S3 path, right? That way, if we go back to the challenge, the learning agent can use the training metadata table to know what images to go pick up, right? That's at least the way I was thinking of it. So yeah, all right. Let's see. I'm looking. It's 5:43. I think I have about 5 minutes left. So I do not think I'm going to be able to do more system APIs with you guys. Instead, I think I should let Diane do the next training question. So go ahead, Diane.
Okay, what data type provides the best performance experience? Ah, Samba. Well, I shouldn't have mentioned who the winner was. Sorry. And why? I should throw that in there as a bonus question. Why?
Kavya got it first. Yep.
Who got it first?
No, well, I'm going to let Mana
Yeah,
judge
really.
the actual
This is
trivia question.
true.
Your bonus question was Kavya.
Okay.
All right,
So,
Mana, you want to call it officially?
yeah, so I think we'll give it to Samba. Samba lead the ground, the foundation. So, congrats, Samba.
Great. I didn't share I let you share your screen, but I'll take it back. So let's see. What I think I'll do instead of continuing down my path, as I build this scenario out, I'm going to put all these resources up for people. Instead of building it out with you guys, I'd rather open it up. I think you had question Q&A on your agenda, right? So
Yeah, it did have Q&A. But like, if you just, I think we still have a bit of time to go through, like, so you can like round up and hit your all the punchlines that you had laid out.
okay, summarize first. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'll do. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So let's examine this. I think my first conclusion I'd take out of this presentation is really data integration is just integration. A lot of times because of history, batch or ETL integration is seen as a different kind of integration. It's somebody might look for a different product, or they might think it's a different kind of project. And my first point is it's just integration. It's just like real-time integration, just like APIs. It's just moving the information around the enterprise from system to system, right? So point number one, ETL is just one kind of integration. Point number two is so this idea of taking the one big integration that you could have designed. If I go on this one and back to here, you can build it as a single monolithic program. And what will end up happening is 5 years later, somebody's going to call me to come refactor it and fix it because they're stuck. And it's what happens with these really big monolithic ETL jobs is we do a little tweak here, and then 3 months later we come back in and we change Postgres out to a cloud location, and then a few months later we change it from FTP to SFTP, or the authentication method, and you do these little changes to the program over many years, and it just turns into a Frankenstein because it's this gigantic unmaintainable mess. And it's not because you coded it wrong. It's because you tried to put it all in one big program, right? And by dividing that program up into little programs, you have the ability to hedge against that kind of complexity rot. I think of it like the bigger the box the code can go in, the more chance you have of things going bad inside it, right? So you build smaller boxes, and I thought the MuleSoft has a way to do that called API-led connectivity, where the boxes aren't what you start with. It's the lines in front of the boxes. It's the way into the box. And that's what we started doing in design centers. We started building API specs that told you what the box did, right? And we did this one. I'll change the color. We've looked at these two here in our example. They're the yellow ones, right? And then we would go on and do the next one. And then we go on and do the next one. And each one of these becomes its own littler program that doesn't rot as fast and gets and it's maintainable over time and reusable and reliable. And I really appreciate you guys are right. That's what we're getting for this different design. And I don't think it's more work. I think a lot of times people think making these API, it's the same amount of work. It's just we put the work in smaller boxes, right? We're still doing the same integration we would have done. We just did it in smaller modules instead of all in one big one. So I think that's how I'd summarize it. And then, of course, you've seen in many MuleSoft meetups and our classes, the way they use the tool set to do it. But I didn't, I like to, in meetups, I don't really want to focus on tools. I like to focus on patterns. So, yeah, that'd be how I'd wrap it up.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. So just a note, if you have questions, I think there was just one question that that someone asked very earlier on into the presentation. I think I'll just mention that. And if you have questions, please feel free to put it in the chat, and then we'll address that. The first one is, how will Mule deal with quantum computing in the coming days? I think that came in when you started the earlier in the presentation. So, yeah.
Well, if Mule were ever to have anything to do with quantum computing, I'd be surprised. Because Mule's the integration layer. Mule's for making programs talk to each other. What you make the programs out of? I'm just going to take the question seriously. I think. I think you're likely to see quantum computing show up here in the supervised learning agent. I think. Where it would make a difference how you do the computing. The major computing component of Mule is data weave. Data weave is a highly concurrent language, and I don't know enough about quantum computing's differences from conventional CPUs to know if data weave would get a benefit. But that's where I would, it's how the processor itself does its computations. So since computations are not Mule's primary job, I don't believe it'll be relevant to Mule before it's relevant to the AI agent on the end or the database or something like that.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And well, Angela says she loves the idea of thinking outside of the box. Speaks to my brain. Adam is asking a question. Saying, what do you say to clients who complain about the extra vCore requirements that come with doing an API-led approach?
Extra vCores, yeah. API-led, when you do it with any point platform in Mule, means that when you're early on in your adoption, you need more programs. I would, and I have experienced this, the longer you go, the less you notice that. And what I mean by more programs, more separate Mule applications. So right at the beginning, I need to make 5 Mule applications for this instead of 1. It's going to cost me 5 0.1 vCores, which is half a core in production, right? I will say later on, you're going to put lots more code in this process API. Like in each one of you might end up with 1 or 2 system APIs. I'm working on one agency, one of my clients' agencies, I'm on a government client. It has been about 1.5 years in, and we built a whole bunch of new APIs at the beginning, and we've added 1 or 2 since then. And the ones that we created in the first place became more mature, and they got more endpoints added to them. So you end up having to get all these vCores for one initial solution, and it seems like a lot. But in the end, you're just making places where the code's going to go, and more code is going to go into these over in the long run. And that's really been my experience. I'm not just telling you theory. Like, that's how it actually ends up happening. The other thing I'd say is if you really are only going to do one solution, you don't have to run it on Cloud Hub. Right. Yeah, Diane just put that in the chat. You could just make a standalone 1-core server and put as many applications on there as you want to, or Runtime Fabric makes you have a smaller footprint too. You can, if you have a fabric, you can run stuff on it. So MuleSoft gives you deployment options that allow you to have more applications for the same core count. But I don't think that's the main answer. I think my long-term answer is that your curve goes up really fast right when you adopt. So these new clients, they have to have 5 APIs for 1 integration, and they're like, what? And then when you have 10 integrations, you still only have 7 APIs, even though you had to do 5 for the first one.
All right. Nelson's asking do you have a Mule template or some other example where we can see code, similar architecture that was shared?
Yeah, I don't, because this is a new presentation. I haven't published any code yet, but this is where it would go, and this is where it will go, because I plan on doing this again, taking what we did together and extending it for the next meetup. So this is my GitHub, and this is where I publish whatever I work on, and that's where I'd put the code for the design for this. That's where I'm going to put it. Plus, I'm going to make make it I'm going to give you guys some Terraform. I don't know if you guys use Terraform, but where you can, my idea is I'll take what I did myself this time, and somebody can kind of just inflate it themselves and build the solution themselves. So, but it's not done yet. This is the first time I did the presentation, so keep an eye out.
And the use case that you shared in the I think it was a Lucy chart there. Yeah, maybe this stuff we can share, and
Yeah, I can export this to a PDF really
Yeah.
easily. Yeah.
I think that would be helpful, and just to give folks
Sure.
some
Yeah,
tools.
I'll do it today, so that way you have. Where's my export button? There it is.
I think I have a question. When I looked at this, when you in the other slide that you had, when you had the system, the 3 system and experience and process APIs, I think there is also a case that could be made for that, for the other, another perspective where someone can go, well, if you want to handle, like, for ETL, for example, transactional system, create a transactional system. This has multiple hops. Is going to be, you're going to have to put a bit more code in all the APIs to be able to handle that, make it much more reliable. What would you say to that?
Yeah, so there's XA transactions, and this design is not XA compatible at all.
Right.
So first thing I would say to that is, if you want to use XA, you have to do it with a process API that does not have a system API separate. In order to interact with the Postgres server, I would also say that S3 and SFTP don't support XA anyway. So usually the way you have to, MuleSoft, we have a pattern we like to call the Saga pattern. It's not just for this, but in the MuleSoft training, we like to point out the use of the Saga pattern, where reliability patterns across a set of APIs like this are very consistent, in that you end up with an orchestrator, which would be the process API, that can back out transactions. So for example, let's say I pick up a file and I'm not supposed to delete it until it's been safely put into S3 and into the Postgres database. I can use a local transaction on the Postgres database and have the system API give me back a 500 or a 200, right?
Yeah.
And then I can the problem is I can't do that until after I've done the S3, because I need the S3 path to put into Postgres. So I'm going to have to first create the S3 object, and then get the path back, and then go start the transaction. And if the transaction fails, now I have to do what's called a compensating transaction. I have to go back to the S3 bucket and delete the file, right? And then all of that means I should not delete the file on the SFTP server. So my opinion is that in this case, the process API would be the orchestrator, and its job would be to coordinate that sequence of events, so that however it ends up, you either still have a file on the SFTP server, or you've got both of the target systems updated successfully. That's called a Saga pattern with an orchestrator.
Right. And then you get the benefit of having the different API splits, promote reusability, and you can have the process API handle that transactional mechanism.
Yeah, and that would be a really good add to the presentation, to kind of show that in the interfaces, right? To have the APIs show the compensating transactions and support the Saga pattern. That would be, I probably will add that. Thanks for that.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I see some comments from Diane. Okay, I see some conversation going on there.
Yeah, we're chatting about the buy-in for API led, giving some pointers.
Okay, and it looks like there are no other questions. So I think that's really it. We have our 3 winners for today: Adam, Sohail, and Samba. And actually, I think I grabbed your emails, so I think I should be good on that. And what did I have left in that slide?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Let me put it back up.
Yeah, actually, I just I just recalled that I don't. I don't.
Yeah.
recall-
So I have a folder every time I do one of these. So let's go to the next step.
I think that was pretty much it. Oh, there you go. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. This is the last one, and again, first of all, a very big thank you to you, Ryan. This was really engaging, at least for me, and uh, enriching, good information. Uh, it's a good spin, just like Angela had mentioned, to thinking about ETL and not having to do everything in one API, and just kind of like looking for that opportunity for usability as that scales. So thanks for that, and it was really engaging. I hope you all enjoyed it, and if you did, again, give kudos to our speaker on LinkedIn. And we have an Instagram group, Winnipeg here. So MuleSoft Meetup WPG. Yeah, just follow us there. And uh, if you have any feedback at the end of this meetup, there's gonna be a feedback, I think, link sent to your email. Yeah, feel free to put some comments there on what you thought was good and what you think can be improved, and yeah, we'll take it up from there. We really value those feedbacks. And if you have any suggested topic, you can feel free to reach out to me and in my email, or you can reach out via our event page for Winnipeg. Aside from that, I think that's really all I had. Ryan, any final words?
Yeah. Do you know? Well, I guess just as another meetup organizer, how often do you guys do a Winnipeg meetup?
Actually, we're trying to do it at least quarterly. It's been last year, I think we did it like maybe twice or three times, but we're trying to do it quarterly, at least quarterly. So there's no cap.
Sure. So if you wanted to ask, so if you're going to be doing one in the summer,
Yeah.
I will come if any one of you wants to present this summer at the Winnipeg meetup. Do you already have somebody? I'm sorry.
No,
Mana?
actually, no.
Then
Yeah.
I will come to your presentation. Whoever it is that the volunteers, contact me on LinkedIn. Let me know when you're going to do the summer Winnipeg meetup, and I'm sure get in touch with Mana to make your proposal of what you want to do a presentation on.
Or we can do that. We can do like a part two of this, if but we can take it offline and talk about it.
Yeah.
For
I
sure.
love to see this meetup keep meeting for 2022.
Yeah. Awesome. And thank you, Diane, for being a great co-host, asking the questions there. Really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Awesome. And yeah, that's it for me for today. I hope you all enjoyed it, and see you next time. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening and a good day.
Thank you.
Okay.